Hey, this is Seagrove. Welcome back to a Meta Forecast. The original Meta Forecasts are coming back. Today we have three great players who need no introduction. We got Gabe Smart, Isaiah Bradner, and Cyrus Davis. You can see their Twitter handles on the screen. So I'm just getting back into the game myself. It's not going well. I'm going to need some coaching. If you all offer coaching, where can I find you all? Gabriel, you start.
You can find me on MetaFi. That's where I do most of my coaching. I've been getting a lot of people ready for Pittsburgh regionals along with Peoria, so I've been pretty busy. So I'm happy I had the time to be on here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Isaiah, what about you? Where can we get coaching from you?
Yeah, you can find coaching. I'm on MetaFi as well, and then you can also just message me on pretty much any platform. Twitter DMs are weird, but I usually can find them, and then Facebook or yeah, Facebook's the best one, but Twitter works fine as well. You can find me anywhere, and then also on MetaFi. You can message me on MetaFi actually. Pretty easy. Isaiah Bradner coaching. Find me on MetaFi. Message me on there. We can set something up. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Also been coaching a decent amount leading up to Pittsburgh. I really enjoy coaching. Love playing Pokemon. So always happy to get people ready.
Awesome, Cyrus. Where can we get coaching from you?
Yep, same here. You can find me on MetaFi. I've been doing nothing but coaching lately, so I still have some room. Right now my schedule is pretty much available, like 12 to 12 Eastern time. So if you find availability, or just want someone to play some more niche decks against you, like stuff like that, I definitely recommend.
Cool. So Cyrus, my first question I want to ask you: if you had to choose this weekend between playing Rapid Strike and Palkia, which would you pick? Or sorry, not this weekend, at Pittsburgh.
Yeah, at Pittsburgh. Honestly, I think both are good calls still. I would probably say Inteleon is like one of the strongest plays for the tournament in general. I'm not really considering playing Palkia this weekend. I am considering playing Inteleon. But I do think Palkia is still strong. It takes sort of awkward matchups against Lugia and sometimes Charizard, but it still can beat anything else, at least like 50% of the time. So
we saw Alex Shemansky put into his list a Giacomo with Spiritomb combo to counter Mew. Do you think that's a good counter choice?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I think you still lose to Mew. I was talking to Josh Frink the other day, good friend of Alex's, and he was talking about he really likes the Spiritomb Giacomo. It does help against Lugia as well. I think it probably makes that matchup at least a 50-50 because that matchup's already not that unfavored. But against Mew, he was saying basically he feels like it makes your matchup like 40-60 instead of like 10-90, which is what the Inteleon versus Mew matchup normally is. I think it's realistically like not worth checking for the matchup if you still lose to it. But I mean, the argument that if it's 40-60 and you hit 2 Mew over the course of the tournament and you manage to beat one of the matchups because it's a 40-60 instead of a 10-90, then it's probably worth it. Or if you hit a Mew that doesn't play Fusion Strike Energy, because I think there'll probably be a couple of those, and like Spiritomb does actually probably swing the matchup in your favor. So I think there's an argument to be made for it, but I'm personally against the Spiritomb Giacomo in the deck. I think it's a waste of space.
Gabriel, I know you've put some time into Palkia, so if you want to add anything to that, feel free. But I also want to know what you think about Lugia for Pit.
Yeah, so I'll go into Palkia. Yeah, so I tested Palkia quite a bit over the past month. It actually was something that I was kind of considering for Worlds. I thought it was pretty underrated. And then Cyrus got 9th place with it, showing that it's actually really good. It was actually one deck that I was testing quite a bit. I think it's okay. I think that the consistency that it has is very good. I think what it loses in matchup spreads overall it gains just by being one of the most aggressive decks in the format. Kind of like Miraidon, where like both decks don't take like incredible matchup spreads, but they just pretty much set up and do what they're supposed to do every game. And if your opponent stumbles, it's really good on capitalizing. I do think path is kind of an issue sometimes. That's one thing that I've kind of ran into. Sometimes they can just like throw down a path on turn 1 and just kind of ruin your board state, which is why I've added in a Lost Vacuum into the deck. I think that helps out a little bit. But yeah, no, I think the deck is fine. I don't think it necessarily consistently beats Tina, which is like one of the issues that I've ran into, which is kind of an issue. But other than that, I think it has, kind of okay matchups against the class. kind of across the board. When it comes to Lugia, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think Lugia is in the best spot it's been in quite some time. Urshifu is getting a lot of hype right now, which the deck does, in my opinion. If you play the 3 V-Guard energy, you shouldn't necessarily have too big of an issue with it. I think the deck does fine in the decks like Charizard if you play Urshifu. However, you do have to cut consistency if you do decide to play that. And I do think the deck does good into most of the Lost Box variants as well, which, those are also decks that are getting hyped. However, you don't have a whole lot of control over games, which is kind of an issue that the deck runs into. And it can just sometimes randomly lose to Path early on, and Path is probably the best card in the format as of right now. And the deck just has those kind of consistency problems. It's a deck that you can either do really well with, or you can be out of the tournament by round 3 or 4. So you really have to kind of look at the risk reward factor of the deck. But it is very good right now. It's probably better than it was heading into Worlds. I think it's better now.
Nice. So I've heard a lot of rumblings about Mew, especially in my area. Isaiah, as our verified Mew player, what's the scoop on Mew?
Oh, okay, I got it. I was confused, but I see your joke. I was like, wait, what are you talking about? But I see. Yeah, there's rumblings about Mew, and that's because Mew's an extremely good deck. Mew does well at every tournament. One spawns into, there's a joke like a Mew like spawn in the top 8 or something. Mew's actually extremely good right now. Mew's one of the few decks that I think has a favored matchup into Gardevoir. Mew has a good matchup into Lost Santina.
I'm losing you. Is that me?
I was rumbling about it because
I lost you.
Did I die for everyone else?
I lost you there for a bit. You're saying it's good into Lost Tina, and then
yeah, it's good into Gardevoir and Lost Tina, which are 2 of the decks that were at least most expected for Worlds. And I mean, Lost Tina has been getting a ton of hype lately, so that carries over to here. So I mean, the deck has been getting hype because it deserves the hype. I mean, it's in an amazing spot right now. Charizard is not proving to be a huge powerhouse, and so it's not looking like that's something that you really have to worry about. And even so, the Charizard lists that have been being played right now, they're kind of weak against Path, and so sometimes you can get them anyways early game. But yeah, I think the deck is getting so much hype because it, like I said, it deserves it. It's one of the best decks right now.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then I'll let you all speak on Lost Box. I want each of you to pick one, but that means whoever gets last is gonna get stuck with one. So Cyrus, why don't you start? What's your favorite Lost Box variant right now, and why is it the better play for Pitt?
Actually, so I'll go with give them some options. I think Sablezard is actually the best Lost Zone deck for Pittsburgh. Just Lost Box with Radiant Charizard, build the deck to try to hit turn 2 Sableye as consistently as possible. So that means, maybe 4 Seal Stones and Pidgeot V, heavier Lost Vacuums, more Stadiums, so that you have more targets for Lost Vacuum, and a Sablezard list that can get turn 2 Sableye beats pretty much everything right now. The only, other than like Inteleon, your worst matchup for Sablezard has always been Arceus decks, especially Arceus Lost City, and those decks are like, nobody's really talking about them right now. I'm sure there'll still be some, but Arceus decks are definitely like probably at the lowest percentage play that they have been for a while. So Sablezard kind of just beats most of the popular decks right now. Really good Gardevoir matchup, really good Lost Tina matchup, really good matchup against other Lost Box decks. So
all right,
I would say that would be my favorite for the event.
Nice. Besides Sablezard, Isaiah, what's your pick?
Yeah, I think that I'm gonna go with Lost Giratina. I'm not positive between Lost Giratina and Turbo. I think those are pretty close for me, but I'm going to go with Lost Giratina. I've played it a lot lately. I made it through day 1 of Worlds with it. I won a cup last weekend, so I've been playing a good amount of Lost Tina. And the reason that I love Lost Tina so much is that I think that Lost Tina has a matchup spread in which you have a good chance in any matchup. There are going to be some tougher matchups. For example, I think like the 2 that you would be scared of are probably Urshifu and Mew. Like those are matchups that are kind of shaky. But every other matchup, like I think you're in a pretty good spot in. I think the deck is pretty consistent. If you build it correctly, it gives you a bunch of options. I think it really, really rewards good play. And so yeah, I've just really enjoyed playing that deck recently, and so I think that if I were to play a Lost Box deck, then it would most likely be Lost and Giratina going into this weekend. Just because one thing that I think is valuable about Giratina, and this is one reason that I think that I ended up playing Turbo Lost Box Day 2 of Worlds. It was like fine. I don't regret it. The reason I played it was I had logic for playing it, but maybe I should have played Giratina because Giratina has like a good chance into everything. It doesn't really have terrible matchups, like I said. And so, in the early rounds of the tournament, if you can hit someone on a crazy deck and your Giratina deck is going to have at least a solid chance against it because you have a Giratina in your deck, you have a Sigla in your deck, and that can go a long way. So, yeah, that's why I like Lost on Giratina and why I think it should be a serious consideration for the weekend.
All right, Gabe, what's your pick with the remaining?
Yeah, so Lost on Giratina is probably my pick, but if I had to pick something else, it would probably be Kyogre as of right now. I think that Kyogre is pretty decent. I think it's your best chance at beating Lugia as well, which that deck's been getting a lot of steam, and I also think that it does okay. I'm into Mew. I think it probably does a little bit better into Mew than Turbo does if they know what they're doing. Because basically your goal is just to find like 2 prizes with something like the Dragonite, and then you just sit there trying to get the Kyogre set up. So I think that's really good. So I think it really does have the chance to beat everything. The big issue with it is time. Losing a long game 1 can be pretty demoralizing as the deck doesn't have a way to finish games incredibly quickly. I guess when it comes to Giratina, I'll kind of touch on this. Giratina is one of the few decks that when you set up correctly, you just beat everything, in my opinion. Hitting turn 2 Lost Impact is just crazy. I feel like you can beat pretty much anything when that happens. So I think that it really does have that pop-off chance, and that it also has a fantastic comeback with things like Roxanne, and also Path is very good. It pretty much has everything that you need to beat anything in the format. However, you do sacrifice a little bit of consistency that something like Turbo or Lost Box Kyogre has, so there is kind of a risk reward factor. But I think that Kyogre is in a pretty decent spot as of right now, and if I wasn't playing Giratina and I was playing a different Lost Box deck, I think it would probably be Kyogre.
Okay. So going into this event, what is the deck to beat, or which deck do you refuse to lose to? I don't want to take a bad matchup into, maybe because you expect it to be the most played, or you expect to see a lot of it at the top tables. What deck do you not want to take a bad matchup into, Gabe?
I do not want to lose to Mew specifically, just because it won the World Championships. On top of it as well, I think the skill floor is relatively low. It's a deck that a lot of casual players are most likely going to play. There's a Battle League deck as well, which means that it's very cheap for newer players to get the cards they need for it, which is actually my big concern playing Urshifu and Talion as of right now, because the deck has a really bad Mew matchup. So I really just don't want to go against just pretty much random Mews and be like, oh, I don't really have a chance at beating them. So I would probably say Mew is the one deck that I don't really want to take a loss to. I don't necessarily know if that means playing something like Drapion or Spiritomb. I just think that means playing just some deck that has at least a 50-50 matchup. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's probably my answer right
now. Isaiah.
Yeah, I think that I'll echo that. I think that whenever I'm preparing for an event, I think that I generally try to have a few decks that I want to have a good matchup for, because I think whenever you're preparing for regionals, it's kind of just a crapshoot to try to predict the meta. I mean, there are 2,000 people at this event. There are going to be so many people. There's going to be obviously so many decks, and so I'm not sure that there's one deck that I'm trying to beat, but the deck or whatever deck I play, my first 3 decks that I want to be beating are Guardian Mew and Lost Tina. I think that those are the 3 decks that I can feel pretty confident there's going to be a good showing of. I'm not sure which one will be the most popular, but I think that those 3 are the 3 that are definitely going to be around the top table. So not exactly answering your question, but yeah, those are the first 3 that I'd be worried about.
Mm-hmm. And Cyrus, what's the deck to beat?
Yeah, I think honestly, building off what Isaiah said a little bit, there is I think, especially if you're the average player going for just points or trying to play something safe, realistically, you will have days where you hit 3 of the same deck in day 1. But as far as day 1 goes, you will usually hit 8 different decks. Maybe 2, you get the same deck twice, maybe hit the same deck twice. But realistically, you're gonna hit 8 different decks in day 1. So if you're just the average player, I wouldn't go countering. To me, countering one specific deck is more for if you're like, oh, I have in the tournament, I can hit this at some point, hit this on my way top 8 lot. That being said, obviously Lost Tina is going to be the most popular deck. Then again, I don't think a lot of decks straight take a loss to Lost Tina. I think most decks like have a shot against it, so I don't know if playing a deck specifically to beat Lost Tina. I'd say probably actually just like regular Lost Box. I don't want to take a Lost Box. I think there will be a lot of them in day 2. I think a lot of top players are sort of defaulting back to Lost Box as we sort of, the meta establishes itself now that we know that Charizard's not a real threat, and Mew just won Worlds. A lot of very good players are defaulting back to Lost Box because they have a lot of control over the game with, and the meta is going to be very diverse. So I think that's the deck that I really don't want to take a loss to, just because I know that I won't be able to win the tournament if I have a bad Lost Box matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in and say one more thing,
Sure.
and I'm going to say that kind of building on what Cyrus said, it is kind of just a factor of the meta that we're in right now that you can't really pick one deck. Like, I think if you ask this question, if you asked me this question like before NAIC, then I would have told you, I'm not taking a bad matchup to Gardevoir because Gardevoir was like everywhere, and then that guard 40% of the room, right? And so if you asked me this question before Worlds, it would have been the same thing. I'm not taking a bad matchup to Gardevoir, but because of how the meta has shaped up, there's just so many decks that are going to be represented that it's just too difficult to answer the question, as Cyrus said. But I do think that it's fine to say, oh, my deck's not great against Mew, I'm going to add in a Spiritomb or something like that. That's obviously fine. Just don't over-prepare because there are so many decks in this meta that you're not going to be able to like a 70-30 against Gardevoir, or a Lost Box or Mew, whichever you pick, and then losing to the others is going to result in a much worse experience than making sure you have a close matchup against them all. In general, you could have an outlier, but that would be my advice.
Something else that's kind of interesting as well that I've noticed is that a lot of players are cutting tech cards for certain matchups and just kind of focusing on consistency. Like we see Gardevoir cut Temple of Sinnoh just for more like consistency, like things like Forest Seal Stone. We see people cutting Spiritomb as well. Things like Drapion too. So it's making the format like really, really balanced as of right now. So it makes it more difficult to like target like specifically like one single deck, just because I feel like the highest percentage of a deck like might be Lost on Giratina, but that I think would probably be only like 15% like maximum. Like I don't think there's going to be a deck that hits like 20-25% of the meta, just because it seems like people are cutting tech cards just for like more consistency, which thus makes I think the format a little bit more balanced, and I think everything kind of has a chance right now. So I think this will be like one of the most diverse metas that we've seen in quite some time, because there really is no undisputed like best deck in format like we had for Worlds and NAIC.
So if you are looking to counter Muse, say, and there you have options of Drapion or Spiritomb, those seem to be the two that people choose the most. How do you decide which one is the right choice for your deck?
Depends on the deck, I think. I think that like Lost on Giratina should be playing on the Drapion because it helps out versus Gardevoir. Also, they can power it up with things like Mirage Gate at some point. It's much like, I think it just depends on the deck because your strategy versus Mew is kind of different. Lost Zone sometimes needs to take those big like one hit KOs, whereas something like Palkia, for example, can just like you have Pokemon that have like 280 HP, so something like a Spiritomb is pretty much going to stop them from being able to like one shot Palkias, and then you should just be like favored like being able to take out like their two prizers or just like two shotting Mews. So I think it really depends on the deck, honestly, but I think Spiritomb in general is a better counter, just because it can stop them from playing the game, whereas something like the Meloetta can just like one shot it, and then also paired it with some like Lost City as well. So I think that the card that like prevents them from playing the game a lot of the time and just like flat out just like wins the matchup, sometimes obviously is good. Whereas I feel like they always kind of have like some way to handle the Drapion, but sometimes they just can't handle the Tomb.
Yeah.
But
Can you guys hear me? Am I good?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. I want to jump in and say two things real quick. First, this is like unrelated, but Sinnoh is kind of being cut. Well, Sinnoh was cut in Torrent's list, I think, because he played double reversal, and so
yeah, that's fair.
I think that it's like half a shift to double reversal being really good, which means that Sinnoh is like kind of bad in response. But you are right that people are cutting tech cards, and I actually think that your tech card should like always be Drapion. I think that Drapion is just almost always going to be better in your deck. I think that Arceus Giratina is maybe the one where Spirit is a little better, but from what I've played, like if you want to have a better Mew matchup, then like throwing a Drapion in your deck is probably going to be more effective than throwing Spiritomb, just because a lot of decks struggle to get up basics early, and then Fusion Mew has Fusion Energy, which can turn off the Spiritomb, and so I think that if you have a better Mew matchup, you will probably gain more points by just throwing a Drapion in your deck, at least from the decks that I've tried to just throw Drapion in. That's my opinion.
So
yeah, I guess I'll expand on that with sort of. I think that it definitely depends on the deck. I think I'll see a lot of people playing like Spiritomb and Lostina, which is just I think I agree for sure. Play Drapion, just Drapion, take 3 prizes on a MVMX, super odd. Drapion, take 3 prizes on a MVMX. But I think it very much depends. Like if you play like Palkia, right? That's a deck where like Spiritomb, like infinitely better than Drapion because you want to take 2. You're not one-shotting me VMAX most of the time, so you want to take 2 prizes 3 times, which means that if your opponent puts Fusion Energies on Genesects, then you want to target down their Genesects anyways. You want to target down their 2 prizes anyways. So you're removing their Genesects Fusion Strike energies and continuing to limit their draw throughout the game as you progress towards your win condition. And that combos really well with Spiritomb. And then I think, like you said, Arctina, obviously, sort of a similar thing where you're usually, you can boss a Genesect, and also you're not really, you play Path, so it doesn't synergize well with Drapion. And that can be the argument with like Lostina too of playing Spiritomb, but you can just not play your Path in that matchup. I think that in general, like the biggest reason to play Drapion is like thinking about how easy it is for you to get the Drapion in the active spot when you need it. How many search cards do you have that can find Drapion? How many switching cards do you have for Drapion? How easy it is for you to retreat your attackers into Drapion? How many 1-prizers do you play to offset the fact that you're just trading 2 for 3 with a Drapion? Like if I play Drapion and Inteleon, it's not going to really do much because my opponent can just still take 2/2/2 and out race me. So I'd have to play 2 Drapion and then also not bench any 2-prizers. So I'd have to try to not start a 2-prizer. But if you're playing Lost Box, you don't have to put any 2-prizers down. You can just play 1-prize game until you get your Drapion off, and then just go 3/3, or go cram into a Meloetta and then 3 into a Genesect. So I think it definitely depends on the deck. But I would agree that like most decks, you should be eyeing up Drapion if you have a easy way to use it and a good way to get it back into the deck.
So Charizard's the big new deck out of Obsidian Flames. What tier would you put Charizard in if you were not allowed to say tier 2? You can't say tier 2. What tier would you put Charizard in? Cyrus, you start.
I guess tier 3 then. I definitely wouldn't call it tier 1.
Okay.
If I could say tier 1.5, that'd be cheating, I think. So I'd say tier 3. I think the deck's kind of weak. I do think that like there is a list out there. There's a way to. A lot of Charizard lists don't play Pumpkaboo, which decreases the win rate of it. I think like Pumpkaboo makes a huge difference in Charizard because Path is its biggest weakness. But I think Delphox V is a really good card that people aren't really playing either. But overall, I don't think it's a tier 1 deck by any means yet.
Gabe, what do you think?
It's unfortunately not going to be in tier 1. I would have to probably say tier 3 as of right now. I think it is it definitely is not as good as Gardevoir was, but Gardevoir was a deck heading into EOIC that the majority of lists were not refined at all. So I think the deck, aside from Tord, doing really well with the deck didn't perform as well as it probably should have, with the meta share that it took up. And I think this is going to be very similar, where Charizard takes up a very decent portion of the metagame. However, it doesn't perform well just because lists aren't actually refined. I do think the deck struggles to players who know exactly the damage caps of 180, 210, 240, 270, 300. I think players, if they understand how to play around how much damage it can do, causes a lot of issues for the deck. And on top of Path arguably being the best card in the format as of right now, you can just instantly lose to that too. So I think the deck is also pretty linear. You pretty much know exactly what they're capable of doing, which is actually why I think something like the Delphox might be kind of cool. I think that Radiant Charizard is definitely needed in the deck as well, because I think you need a little bit more depth. But I do think that someone will probably make top 8 or top 16 with it. I don't know if anyone would really argue that, because I think someone will find out a list that will, kind of be just like the correct like Charizard list. But I think that the deck won't perform very well for the amount of players that actually play it. But I think it's okay. But I think it will definitely get stronger when like 151 comes out, when we also get the new Charizard that deals like 300 plus damage. But right now it's, I think, a little weak.
Isaiah, what do you think? I think you're on mute. Yeah. I can't hear you, Isaiah. What do you think about Charizard? What tier would you put it in?
Yeah. So am I back?
Yes. No.
Yes, no.
Yeah, there you are. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's kind of hard to answer whenever you take out the correct answer. It's like saying, all right, what's 2 + 2 equal, but you can't say 4.
Exactly.
But you guys have to give me an answer. And so I think the deck is in tier 2, and the problem is that I don't think it can be lost box decks. I think the deck is actually amazing everywhere else. Like I've played a good amount of Charizard. I mean, I think your Mew matchup is good. I think your Gardevoir matchup is relatively good. But I think that the problem is that you end up losing to Lost Tina a good amount of the time, and you end up losing to Turbo also a reasonable amount of the time. And people kind of said the same thing about Chimpao. They said, like, I don't think Chimpao's good right now, but like whenever someone finds the right list, like Chimpao is going to be really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
But then the right list ended up not being out there. In the deck, it just ended up being like a little bit too weak. And so I think that might be the same case for Charizard, where the deck feels extremely powerful because it is extremely powerful. Like there's a lot of really good things about the deck. Like whenever you set up 2 Charizards, like that board presence is better than the board presence of like any other deck. I mean, in format for sure. It's like you have 2 Giratina set up that can both use Star Requiem. Like that's broken. Set up, and so I just think that there are problems with the deck. I don't think the problems can be fixed. But it's the first tournament of every format, and so maybe I'm wrong and someone will fix them.
The Tina matchup is so bad. Like I don't know how you beat that matchup if they set up. Like I tested out the matchup and I was like, there's so many ways they can beat you, in my opinion. Like there's 3 different routes that they can take in that matchup. I feel like that is like not good for you.
I mean, the problem with the deck is that like half of its matchups are like that, right? Like there's so many matchups for it that just feel unwinnable if the player actually knows like what they're doing. Like I think Inteleon's like next to unwinnable if they know what they're doing. I think a lot of even like Arctina, like if they just judge path you every turn, like your deck is really not good.
Palkia is not that bad of a matchup.
It's so bad against path.
Arctina's fine.
Yeah, Palkia is like a good matchup for you, but like
it's still losable if they know how to like
manipulate
the first trade.
Charizard is so attack is 330 HP and he one shot. It's so broken.
It does beat Mew.
I mean, I agree. I think
if you set
up,
you
a little
beat
bit closer than unwinnable, but I mean, I'll agree. Like it definitely has flaws. Definitely has flaws.
My issue with the deck is your opponent has too much control over how much damage you do. That's really what it comes down to.
That's why I think the Inteleon matchup isn't that good.
Yeah,
because they can just kind of control the amount of damage that you're doing, and like Cheryl, and just like make the game go long, set up everything with damage, and
they
just go like
when they take their prizes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they don't really control it because like they have to take prizes to win the game, and so it's not like your opponent's like laughing at you like, haha, I've taken 0 prize cards. You're only doing 180 damage. Like, I mean, they only
unless you go if you go second. Sometimes it is though. Sometimes if you go second and they just bench a bunch of Inteleons, you just never get a Charizard in play. They can just double gun a Yogaloop. Double gun a Yogaloop.
Yeah, definitely. No, definitely. But like that's what happens whenever you lose. Like you can definitely just lose that way against Inteleon. But I don't know. I would say do not play Charizard for Pittsburgh. Like I think that especially because the majority of lists are probably not going to be refined. Like one really good thing about the online era is that you can like find an amazing list for a deck. Like you can pick up Vance Kelly's Fusion Mew list and you can know it's like at least decent. Or you can pick up Tord's Gardevoir list and you know it's at least decent. There's really not any Charizard lists right now that are proven. I think that if you're the decks you're considering, Pittsburgh, like if you've been smashing with it and you love it, take it, like do it. But if you're kind of on the fence, then I would say steer away from it because it's probably not proven, and there are most likely flaws with your list that you don't know about. And so I would not risk playing them in a tournament.
Yeah, if you must play it, definitely play Pumpkaboo.
Yes.
You have to play Pumpkaboo.
You need to play so many outs.
Okay, I'm down with that.
I've put a lot of time into Zard, and I feel like a lot of it was wasted. But the Pumpkaboo is a must. I put it in pretty early from a friend's recommendation, and it was necessary. It was game changing. I thought that made the deck good, but I was wrong. Okay. So, other than Charizard, are there any decks coming out of OBF that to look out for? Anything decent outside of Charizard?
It's a one card set. There is a single card in Obsidian Flames, and that card is Charizard.
Okay. Any decks that improve because of cards like Pidgeot or Cleffa or Stadium or anything?
Yeah, control decks in general have a really good engine in Cleffa right now. Unfortunately, Cleffa's not very good against Lost Walks, but like you have other ways to beat and set up against Lost Walks. So I think like Cleffa makes all control decks better, even just like as a one of. I think it's a pretty big improvement. Just having Gormandize back basically, but otherwise I can't think of any. I mean, Pokemon League Headquarters is an okay card to play in Gardevoir with Iono. That's all that I can really. Oh, and the Tool Search Stadium is another control buff that can also be played in decks like Gardevoir if you want to play Sky Steel Stone and Forest Steel Stone or something like that. So those are like a few like interesting cards that I could like. I wouldn't be surprised to see any of those cards on stream or in day 2 or in top 8. But like they're not like format defining. I just think that like. I mean, there probably won't be a lot of people playing Control, so that already outrights a couple of those cards that I mentioned.
Yeah, I think that like things like Vengeful Punch are kind of interesting as well. I know that Alex Szymanski did well at a League Cup, I think was it, with like Lost Box, with like the Vengeful Punch, with pairs up really nice with the Crabominable V, which I thought was kind of cool. I think that Pidgeot is a good card. However, it's not, I think, good right now. I think that maybe in the future when Path is like gone, I think it has a lot more potential. But like people have been throwing the card into decks like Chen Pao, which I just don't think makes a whole lot of sense because then their deck just loses to something like Roxanne Path. So I think that like Pidgeot has potential in the future, but I think it's just a really bad card as of right now.
So, what deck is the most underrated deck? What deck are people sleeping on that they shouldn't be? Gabe, why don't you start?
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Colorless Lugia is a little bit better than people are giving it credit for. I know some people might disagree with me, but I think that deck is not terrible. I also I've also played a couple games with like Lasso and Gudra, and I don't think that deck is complete garbage. I think with like Sableye and like Radiant Greninja, you have some little cool things, and also like Zamazenta, you can actually do some really interesting things with that deck. Now that's definitely going out on a limb, but I have played some stuff with it. But I guess like a deck that's more close to being like a known meta deck, I would say that people aren't talking enough about is actually Colorless Lugia, because it's actually been doing really well at League Cups. I know. I think Nathan Stratford went down to 2 Arizona Cups from like Utah and won them both this weekend.
Nice.
With Lugia. So that's kind of interesting as of right now. But those would be kind of 2 decks that I actually think are kind of cool, but no one's really talking about.
Isaiah, what's the most underrated deck right now?
I think that. I have no idea. People forgot about Gardevoir for some reason. Like people don't like Gardevoir, and you should remember Gardevoir because that deck's really broken. So maybe Gardevoir. I just the good decks are really good. Why would I ever play Colorless Lugia when I can play Single Strike Lugia? Like call me Reagan Retzloff, but like I have no clue why I would ever play Colorless Lugia whenever I could like put Tyranitar and Yveltal in my deck and then smash them. But maybe but
I never said it was better than Single Strike Lugia.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of any decks right now that one it wins in a specific metagame, and so I think people are picking up that we have a good shot of it being this metagame. And yeah, I can't really think of any decks that I think are particularly underrated right now. I think that the best decks are really good, and people know that they're pretty good.
Cyrus, what's the most underrated deck?
I'd say I'll put a few out there. I mean, I mentioned Sablezard already. I think Sablezard's really good, and not enough people are talking about it. I've heard a couple people saying, yeah, it seems pretty good right now, but overall, definitely very underrated. Palkia, I think, is super underrated, but like I understand why. Its power ceiling isn't ridiculously high. It does have good still, so I think it's still a very solid deck. Inteleon, I'd say that most top players are like respecting Inteleon this weekend, but I would maybe not underrated, but definitely underplayed. Will be very underrepresented as far for like how good it is for this weekend. And I'd honestly even say DTE Mew. I don't think that many people are actually playing Spiritomb. Drapian's effective against both DTE Mew and Fusion Mew. I think DTE Mew is actually pretty strong right now. I'd say DTE Mew is like very underrated. And like you don't auto lose. It feels like you do, but like you don't necessarily auto lose the Spiritomb if you go first, and you can like get a decent hand because you have draw sporters still. And then I guess Miraidon, maybe. We haven't talked about Miraidon or Excalibur. I think both of those decks are like fine plays. I wouldn't play either of them, but like I think both of them will be represented in day 2. I wouldn't be like shocked if either of them made top. I definitely think some will be in top 16, top 52.
Mm-hmm. So
if you wanna play Chimpow this weekend, then go to the world's top 8 list and go to seniors and go to Rune Hermines and then copy his list and then play it, because that is the best Chimpow Excalibur list on the planet. And so if you want to play Chimpow,
I don't know what that list looks like, but
No shot, bro. That deck has Arceus in it, dude. That makes the deck so bad.
Is perfect. I played
oh,
Chimpow. That list is so good. If you want to play Chimpow, copy that list.
I'm gonna counter proposal and say go to World's Limitless top 32 Kieran Farah's list that doesn't play Arceus and plays Tutuba Barrel and Pokestop. But
that list is so much better. It's so much better. I agree with Cyrus.
It doesn't have Arceus. You can't beat like anything. Like if you don't have Arceus, you're next. Like oh no, oh my god. Arceus is.
How are you finding Arceus and like double Frigibax?
I hate Excalibur, but. That's the list I've used for testing, and I feel like it's at like way more consistent than I feel like it should be whenever I test against it. So, I don't know. That list is what I use because I respect Kieran a lot as a player, and I think it's really good, and it works for me. I haven't tried Excalibur with Arceus though, so try both, whatever you feel more comfortable with. But I think Kieran's list is good.
We talked about this a bit before we started recording, but my goal. Like I said, I'm getting back in. I'm not feeling too confident in going into Pittsburgh. What's a easy deck if I want to try and get top 256? What should I play? Cyrus, you start.
I'm going to steal what Gabe said before we started recording and say Single Strike Lugia. So he'll have to pick a new deck to recommend. That's what I'm going to say. I think that's probably the play if you don't have like if you're like not super confident in playing anything. I don't think the deck's that hard to play. I mean, like we've talked about, like the biggest problem with Single Strike Lugia is like player agency and how much control you have over the game. So if you're not super confident in your ability to control, give it up to get to do it for you.
Sounds good. Isaiah, what should I play?
That's a good question. I think Single Strike Lugia is fine. I think that I'm just gonna agree. I mean, I think it's a pretty good deck right now. You could also play Mew, but it's a lot easier to lose the game when you're playing Mew than it is with Single Strike. Like you can definitely like play cards and then like a few turns later realize that you lost yourself the game with Mew. But
or
if you've been playing a lot,
realize, but yeah.
That's even worse. But it's harder to do that with Lugia because you set up and you attack. I do think that the deck obviously has
I think it has more agency than we like to say. I mean, there's a reason that Reagan was the only Lugia player to do well like over and over and over again, right? Like that has to mean something about the deck's agency. But of course, it doesn't feel as nice as like Gardevoir or where you can control your entire turn. So yeah, I feel like single stick Lugia is a fine deck for someone to play. I mean, it's in a reasonable spot in the meta, and while it's not skillless, you can double chops without having to think too much. And if that's something you're worried about, then it could be the deck.
Gabe.
Yeah, so I'm gonna echo those statements. I think Lugia is like very easy to like learn the basics of. I think some of like the more like understanding the resources and stuff like that, and like having to play like some certain matchups do take a little bit of skill. Kind of like what Isaiah said, Reagan was one of the very few people that consistently did well tournament after tournament after tournament. Like they just kept, like top 8ing. It seemed like every single event with that deck. So I think that deck is like very good. It has decent matchups. It's also a deck that I wouldn't be surprised to see it win the tournament. Like I wouldn't be surprised if like Reagan showed up with it and got like another top 8 or like won the tournament with it. However, it does have a lot of consistency problems. It can just kind of lose randomly to like a path just like hitting the board. I actually think another deck that if you're not trying to play Lugia and trying to play something a little bit more consistent, I think that Miraidon's like pretty easy to understand. You just slam electric generators and just go judge path and just pray it works. And like sometimes it works and sometimes you do 220 turn 1 and it's fun. I think that deck is like one of the easiest decks to play. Like it's just pretty much electric generator simulator and just hope it sticks. And it's actually not terrible. Like the deck does have some decent matchups.
See, Gabe got one part, Gabe needed to play part, but Gabe didn't get enough games to 256 part. So that's the problem with Miraidon and Arctina. Is that you can play them, but there's a lot less high chance that you'll win enough game 256.
You can go 6-3 with Miraidon. Come on, dude. You're gonna hit.
Oh, you can.
I definitely think Miraidon's actually not that bad.
I don't think it's that bad.
It's Gardevoir,
and I will say, I'm someone, especially because I like to play like weird decks, who likes to rag on decks for being, like brainless. I think we all do, like. But if you like to play Lugia, you like to play Miraidon, or you like to play Arctina even, like, no deck is, like, completely skill devoid, right? That's why good players continue to do good no matter what they play, and that's why people who aren't as good with the decks, no matter what they're playing, won't do as well as the really, really good players. No deck, true. Especially in a format with, like, Iono, is truly skill-less, You gotta... So never feel bad about your deck choice. Never feel like you're phoning it in playing Arctina. If you think that like Lugia is a good play for the event, don't let me thinking that Lugia is. Don't let me like tweeting that Lugia sucks discourage you from play if you just really like playing Lugia and you feel confident with it.
All right, as we're getting ready to close out, we're going to go around. Everyone can give a shout out to their sponsors or whatever they want to do there, and then also tell us the one deck that you will not be playing, the best deck that you will not play at Pittsburgh.
I was going to say, I got to give a...
Cyrus, why don't you start? Sponsors, and what is the best deck that you will not play?
I'm going to say, so shout out to my sponsor, the Shuffle Squad. Follow me on Twitter at Cyrus Davis CCG, book me on Metafy, all that good stuff. The best deck that I will not be playing is probably either Lost Tina or Gardevoir. I think Gardevoir with Drifloon even, I think is really cool right now. But
okay. Isaiah.
I won't be playing that.
Shout out to Dadner and Momner for sponsoring me and letting me stay at their house while I'm not at college. Appreciate it. You guys are the real MVPs. And shout out to my little brother Benson for testing with me and training. And the best deck that I won't play. I don't know, because I think I could reasonably play I won't play Kyogre. So that's probably the best deck that I think I won't play. I think that deck's a little bit worse than some of the other best decks. So yeah, I'm gonna say Kyogre.
Mm-hmm. Gabe.
Shout out my sponsors, Dead Draw Gaming and Cutter Tap. You can book me on Medify as well at Smart TCG. Pretty much all my socials and YouTubes and stuff like that are all just Smart TCG. The best deck that I probably won't be playing is either Kyogre or Chen Pao. I do think Kyogre kind of struggles with some things as of right now, and I think Chen Pao is too much of a glass cannon deck for me. Personally, to go into the tournament and consciously say that I made a good choice, just because sometimes it just does not function at all. But then again, I do play Lugia, so maybe that's not a very good argument. So, as of right now, I would probably say Chen Pao would be the best deck that I don't think I envision touching at all, like before the tournament. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. For myself, check out seagrovetcg.com. I have 2 tools on there that I made for players because I wasn't a big fan of the official ones. There's an event finder there, and there is a way for you to do card search because I didn't like the official card search either. So check those out if you are, you like to cook up decks, or if you're just looking for events near you. You can filter by distance and tournament type. So, like, show me all cups within 200 miles and all challenges within 50 or 25 or whatever you want to do. And I won't be playing Mew because I just sold it. So that is it. Thank you all so much for your time. It was really insightful. Glad to be back, and thank you all for doing this with me. Have a good one.